Why did I suspect that you would be asking that question? No, indeed, the ICC has made a statement in that regard. And as you well know, we are due to host as South Africa the next BRICS summit in August of this year. And the BRICS summit is often attended by the heads of state as well as ministers and a number of other officials. And in our case, as South Africa, we have tended to have what we call an outreach program where we invite a number of other countries to be part of this. And in our experience, we've often wanted Africa to be part of the BRICS summit. So yes, indeed, having heard what the ICC has said in relation to President Putin, that matter is under consideration and discussion. And I've often said when I'm asked this that when the matter is finalized, we will be able to tell everyone, and hopefully including yourself, what our posture is going to be on all this. So be rest assured that this matter, having been discussed, we will be able to tell everyone what our posture is going to be. Well, when it happens. When it happens. Thank you.
My comment. Well, I'm afraid that I will not be a part of those discussions. So Finland has joined the ICC basic foundations, and we surely follow ICC opinions and orders. This is what I have already said in Finland.
Thank you very much. The second question goes to Sophie.
Sophie Mkwena from the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Mr. President and President of Finland, starting with President Ramaphosa, it is a follow-up to this question. The ANC had its National Executive Committee meeting, and today the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, announcing that a decision has been taken to pull out of the ICC. We know that in 2017, that was the resolution of conference. 2021, you rescinded that resolution. And it will take 2 years for South Africa to pull out if you start the process now. And therefore, what's on the table, you can't change. That speaks to the warrant of arrest against President Putin. Has the ANC taken that decision to pull out, and how do you hope to go about this decision? And to President, the Deputy Secretary General of the Council of the Security Council of
Whoopsie. That was quick.
So
it's the wind.
Yes. The Deputy Chair of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, Mr. Dmitry Medvedev, said that they are going to continue with the war because the expansion of NATO to them is a threat to their own security. What is your reaction? And finally, from both leaders, the situation in Sudan is very bad, and we heard about the 72-hour truce, but we are told that both sides have violated the truce or the ceasefire.
Do you want to go first?
No.
Oh, I should go first.
Please.
I'm sorry about the flag dropping down. It's a function of the wind, and it's now been removed out. It could have been quite a disaster because it almost fell on your head.
But we are both lucky.
Yes, aren't we lucky? Yes, the governing party, the African National Congress, has taken that decision that it is prudent that South Africa should pull out of the ICC, largely because of the manner in which the ICC has been seen to be dealing with these types of problems. And there's also been commentary, I believe, from Amnesty International, where there's been a reflection on what many people believe is an unfair treatment. And our view is that we would like this matter of unfair treatment to be properly discussed. But in the meantime, the governing party has decided once again that there should be a pull-out. So that will be a matter that will be taken forward. With regard to what is happening in the Sudan, we are concerned and have been concerned about the outbreak of violence, particularly in the Khartoum area, where a number of people have found themselves in a very, very dangerous situation. We have had, like many other countries in the world, to evacuate South Africans, as well as giving assistance to our sisterly countries on the continent who have had people stranded in that conflict. And they are now in Egypt, about 77 South Africans and nationals from countries such as Angola, Namibia, and others. And I do believe that we could have given assistance to also some people from Brazil. But for us, it is a dangerous moment for many people, and we've had no choice but to go and lend assistance and get people out. And we hope that they will be able to return back to South Africa and their respective countries. We obviously are grateful that there's a small window of opportunity to be able to do this during this small ceasefire moment. But in the end, we want a situation where there is a permanent ceasefire and that the conflict must be brought to an end. And obviously, we will, through the African Union, be seeking to make interventions, also through the regional body IGAD, that war, that conflict should come to an end. Nobody ever benefits from conflict, particularly violent conflict. It just destroys life and disrupts economies and the lives of ordinary people. And it is for this reason that we insist and call upon those who are involved in this conflict to immediately cease the violent activities that they're involved in, and peace and mediation is the only way out. That problem in the Sudan can only be resolved through negotiation and mediation, and that is what we are calling for. Thank you.
Unfortunately, I wasn't very sure what do you want my answer to Sudan or?
Both Sudan and the statement by the Russian Federation.
Okay. Yes, what comes to situation in Sudan, I have to say that I believe we got a full answer already. I have very little knowledge and possibilities of adding anything, but agreeing a lot. I think that it's very important that African states and state leaders have taken a very decisive position here and are, in a way, in my eyes, it looks that they want to solve this crisis by themselves, and this is a fine principle. What comes to Medvedev, and was it his comments on NATO being involved. Okay. Yes. If we look at the war in Ukraine, how it started, a big neighbor attacks a smaller one from different sides of the country, that was a full invasion. It rose, like I said, a public feeling amongst European people. This is wrong. And when people in free nations have an opinion, it reflects also on politics. And this feeling surely was noted, and that's why the governments decided to help Ukrainians. In Finland, it was very obvious because we were attacked by Soviet Union in 1939, and we were left almost alone, which still is in nations' memory. So the same feelings seemed to raise in the States too, and so there's a huge Western help for Ukrainians. But all the Fortunately, it was not a flag again. But from the very beginning, it has been very clear that avoiding any kind of enlargement of the war, escalation of the war, has been thought thoroughly. That deals with the horizontal and vertical escalation. And well, what we have seen is that the support from European countries, from Western world, has increased. It has also come heavier, but nevertheless the aim is to help Ukrainians to defend their country. And there's nothing wrong in that. And as it remains as a help of defending, it's very difficult to try to say that it's escalation.
Thank you very much. The second question goes to Oli.
No, I'm Oli Maris from Ilta-Sanomat. Question for President Ramaphosa. Mr. President, you have blamed NATO for the war in Ukraine and resisted calls to condemn Russia. How would you explain South Africa's Russian policy to Finland, as Finland has just joined NATO because of Russia's attack to Ukraine? Why do you see problem in NATO and not in Putin? And a follow-up to President Niinistö, what do you think of Russia's power game in Africa, and how should Finland and other Western countries respond to Russia's challenge?
Well, let me start off by saying in my discussions with President Niinistö, he explained very well and outlined the reasons and the steps that have been taken by Finland to want to join NATO. And it is within Finland's right to decide to join NATO. They hadn't been part of NATO for the longest time, and now they've decided to join NATO. And we respect that and we accept that. And so we can never really question the right of a nation to decide which formation they want to be part of. With regard to our own stance on this whole conflict, we've been very clear right from the beginning that conflicts of whatever nature are best resolved through negotiation And I've often said that this was a lesson that we were well taught by the father of our democracy, Nelson Mandela, who from the time he was in prison insisted that conflicts, including what was deemed to be a most intractable conflict of apartheid, should best be resolved through negotiation. And he insisted that that should be the case, and he triumphed in that. Upon being released from prison, the negotiations then ensued, and they brought an end to the nightmare of apartheid. And that is the great lesson we've learned from the great Nelson Mandela, which we continue to propagate and say any conflict needs to be resolved in that way. And one of the reasons why we've adopted this stance of being non-aligned is to ensure that we are able, even as a country, to play a role in helping the conflict to come to an end. And I have, on a number of occasions, spoken to President Putin, and my message has always been clear. There needs to be a negotiation, and also when I've spoken to President Zelensky. Because we do believe that every conflict, even if it's a war, in the end has to come to an end, and the end has to be a negotiated conclusion. And so we therefore have that view, and we are pleased that on a number of countries on the African continent subscribe to this approach and to this view. And that is why even today we support efforts that are being made by a number of countries to bring this conflict to a negotiated end. So that is the approach that we still hold on to. And of course, with regard to NATO's role, NATO obviously continues to play the role it is playing, and we've also observed that, yes, there have been concerns and fears in relation to agreements that were reached about what, for instance, Russia believed was an encroachment that threatened their own security, and we've taken note of that. But notwithstanding, having taken note of that, we still believe that the parties, be they in Europe, together with Russia, do need to negotiate, because there is just no other alternative other than to negotiate for a peace. And that is the best alternative that we see. Thank you.
Yes, I referred already that we are hopefully not facing a globe which is dividing into two or more pieces, and that differences between nations are deep. You asked about power game, Russia's power game in Africa. I would say that I would rather answer to power game as a general item. It's played by many, and it's played elsewhere than Africa too. It's played globally. And you might call it as a competition of nations' souls. This is not a new phenomenon. This has been taking place surely on earlier times, but maybe we see more of that now. And the war in Ukraine is one dividing element, which maybe not in itself divides, but it creates thinking around it, where many other things are also involved, that may actually grow us apart more. I fully agree with President Ramaphosa. He has underlined the importance of United Nations. And I have said that it might appear that next autumn, when we have General Assembly, that will be an exciting one because of these reasons I told. I would also point out that even in Finland we hear now a lot of criticism against the United Nations and against its Security Council, which undoubtedly haven't succeeded to make any decisions lately, and this is even an earlier experience. There have been quite radical words said about United Nations, but my answer is that what then? What instead of that? If we give up United Nations, we have nothing left. And a situation where we have tense feelings around the globe with nothing common left is even more dangerous. So even unsuccessful UN is better than not an UN at all.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. And to wrap us up is Natasha.
Good day to both presidents. It's Natasha Peary here from SABC News. I just want to know, after this state visit, Mr. President, will there be a possibility of increasing more trade between the two countries? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Finland has invested 2 billion rand in our country over the past 3 years or so. And then just on coalition governments, coalitions have become a norm in Finland. Earlier on this year, we spoke to the chair of the Parliamentary Committee on Contact, Mr. Fikile Xhasa, and he had indicated that MPs will be embarking on a study tour to Scandinavian countries, including Finland, to investigate how they've managed to make coalition governments work. So maybe to President Minister, what will you be teaching our lawmakers? And to President Ramaphosa, what do you expect? And then just last question, Mr. President, President Ramaphosa, there's just been some public outcry on the landing of a private airplane by the UAE leader in Malaysia. Just your reaction to it. Thank you very much.
Do you want to talk about coalitions? And what lessons you can impart to me?
Well, actually, I have huge respect on teachers, but I'm not myself one.
Yes. Starting off with the issue of coalitions, clearly, a number of countries around the world, including countries in Europe, have a lot to teach us or to impart as lessons to us, because they have been involved in the coalition business for much longer than we have, and they obviously are more economically better developed than we are, and that stands them in good stead. And they also have more developed and more stable public service architectures, where even as the parties may change in terms of government, the provision of services to the population continues, because they have established that stability at the public servants level. And we have not yet reached that milieu, and that is why whenever there are changes in coalition government at the political level, it also impacts negatively on the services that should be provided to ordinary citizens. So that is where we need to go and learn how they have mastered this. And it is for this reason, to try and resolve that challenge, that we have decided on professionalizing the civil service. That the more your civil service is professionalized and people with good skills are appointed and they have good tenure in their positions, then you are able to stabilize that important layer of government, which is the civil service, so that even if there's a change of a mayor or a premier or whatever, that provision of services continues, because the people must not suffer at the expense of changes at the political level or political leadership in government. So they have mastered that, and that's what we need to go and learn and get to understand. With regard to the issue that you referred to, the landing of a plane from the UAE, the various processes were followed, and that they are going to be explained by the various ministers who've been involved in this whole process of the visit by the President of the UAE and the landing of the plane in Belebu Airport in the Eastern Cape. So that all has a clear explanation, and the relevant ministers are going to be able to explain that, because there is an explanation that has to be given, yes, to the people of South Africa, and also the processes that were followed, and the various permissions that were also given for that whole visit to be facilitated. So that will be explained in full.
Thank you very much.
Maybe I continue a bit, not by a lesson, but just telling what happens in Finland in this aspect. First, quite pragmatic opinion. I don't remember we have ever had a party which would have more than 30%, or I don't remember. So it's a necessity to have a partner if the biggest one is forming a government. Our tradition actually started, in my opinion, more than 100 years ago we had a civil war, and after that the defeated side, political side, was invited to government in 10 years' time after the civil war. And that was the key element why Finns could keep together during the Second World War, when in Winter War Soviet Union attacked us. Even those who had lost understood that we are keeping together. And from those times we have a tradition of coalitions, but on the other hand we have to keep in mind that our model, which goes over the line left-right, is not familiar in other Nordic countries. They more stay on their blocks. So there are different kind of modifications how you cooperate.
Maybe on the coalitions issue, we have had coalitions right from the beginning of our democracy, which people tend to forget about. The very first government led by President Nelson Mandela was a coalition of some sorts. In fact, it was called the Government of National Unity. And beyond that, the majority party has always brought in people from minority parties. Up till today, I have in my cabinet participation by a minority party, and that has always worked well. And where the majority party has won more votes, it should behove on that party to then decide to form a coalition government, which we have always done. So we have deep experience. It is at the local level where there is a great deal of instability, and it is this that we need to resolve and stabilize those local government, municipal government, and that is why we're now thinking of having a threshold. If you have a particular threshold where your support level goes beyond that threshold that you can then be part of a coalition government, so that there is no instability. Because in the end, it is the service that we provide to our people that should come first, rather than the spoils of governance. So that is what we need to focus on. But I look forward to the lessons that we can draw from countries such as Finland on coalition governments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. That brings us to the end of this media briefing. Thank you very much.
The flag almost had us.